The time is now 7:13 this morning and Election Day is next month. During that time, Houston voters will select a new mayor for the Bayou City. Based on recent polls, the top 6 candidates include Sylvester Turner, Adrian Garcia, Chris Bell, Bill King, Stephen Costello, and Ben Hall in no particular order. One of the candidates is joining our roundup panel in the newsroom, and he is Chris Bell. He will be fielding questions from Fox 26 senior legal analyst Chris Tritico, Fox 26 news analyst Mustafa Tamiz, and public policy analyst Jackie Bally. Good morning, you guys.
Good
Are you gonna ask Chris Bell the tough questions?
Chris is in the hot seat. Now, Chris
He's in the hot seat.
He's in the hot seat. Now, we're going to do this every Sunday until we get all of them in and let everybody have an opportunity to come in and ask questions. Chris Bell, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You've been a frequent guest host here on the Roundup until
But y'all don't be intimidated.
Until you ran for office. We're good to have you back. I want to start with the HERO ordinance. It's garnering a lot of news, polarizing on both sides. It's going to have an impact on the outcome of the election. Are you supporting a HERO, and how is HERO going to affect this election?
Absolutely, I'm supporting it. Whenever there's been a question of discrimination or equality, I've always been on the right side, standing against discrimination and for equality. And this is a non-discrimination ordinance, just like other major cities have. And we're long overdue here in the city of Houston. I think it's sad in a city that has the reputation for being one of the most open cities in the entire country that we would do anything to jeopardize that reputation. But if we're going to have this very divisive debate, it should at least be an honest debate and focused on the fact that it is a discrimination ordinance and it's not a bathroom ordinance. No one's bathroom habits are going to change as a result of this ordinance, one way or the other.
What's the impact on the election? This is such a polarizing piece of legislation.
Well, certainly as far as I'm concerned, I'm hoping that supporters of HERO will come out and support my campaign. I think my supporters are the ones most inclined to support the ordinance. That has been my strongest base of support during the years that I've run for office.
Is that why one of the reasons you call yourself the most progressive candidates in the race?
Well, that and other reasons. I think whether it's issues involving women's health or discrimination, equality, the revenue cap. I think that you can kind of go up and down the line in this particular race and see that I've taken the most progressive positions. And as you've also heard me say, Jackie, I wear that banner with pride. We live in a progressive city, and I think it's deserving of progressive leadership.
Now, you have proposed a very controversial, well, I don't know if it's controversial. We spoke about a controversial policy earlier this morning with the release of inmates who have minor and in some cases crime with a drug. And you released a policy on marijuana.
Class C misdemeanor possession, minor possession of marijuana. Obviously, it's being treated differently at the district attorney's office now. Devin Anderson has put in a program where, for all intents and purposes, and Chris could probably explain this better, but it's pretrial diversion, keeping people from being saddled with a criminal record. I think it's now time for the city to do its part. Obviously, we have a jail overcrowding problem. It's a horrific place, and I think that someone who has a small amount of marijuana doesn't need to spend the night in jail. We should take advantage of cite and release. For years, that's been on the books here in the state of Texas, allowing municipalities not to jail such an individual, but simply write them a ticket, still be required to show up in court, and the courts would have to handle it. But I just think it's a much smarter way of dealing with marijuana possession. So
what you're saying is not ask the legislature to change the law yet. You're just saying the city will issue a summons on arrest.
The law has already changed. A municipality is already allowed to cite and release, write a ticket for a small amount of marijuana.
Switching gears, you've been on the campaign trail, and the potholes and traffic come up every single time. And so for the next mayor, this problem is going to be big, and the mayor after that's going to probably even be bigger. What direction should we head in terms of managing our traffic?
Well, I think we have to take streets and traffic management out of the Public Works Department and make that its own department that would report directly to the mayor's office. And thereafter, anything having to do with mobility, whether we were talking about potholes or the synchronization of traffic lights or repairing or rebuilding sidewalks, all of that would fall under that department. And my idea there is that those issues should never fall off the radar screen or off the priority scale, and if it's its own department, I think it ensures that doesn't happen.
But when you have, I'm sorry, do you have another follow-up? Go ahead. When you have that as a separate department, that's not going to increase the funding. And the city has a huge funding issue coming its way with the unfunded mandate for pensions that we can't cover. Where are you going to get the money?
Well, Rebuild has money. And that fund finally has enough money to where you can do something about it. I've also said I would entertain going back to the old system of bonding the debt if we decide that's a better way to go. But we were doing that before, and we weren't accomplishing a great deal in terms of infrastructure. But this almost requires a military-style approach to really figure out how we're going to get on top of infrastructure. It is a major expense. Finally, there are some dollars in the rebuild fund. I think the first order of business is auditing that fund and seeing how the dollars perhaps were misspent to restore trust from the public. But we're going to have to tackle this because people are fed up.
I want to go back to the Public Works Department because lots of my colleagues who are in the infrastructure industry are having issues with the Public Works Department. Do you believe in reorganizing? Do you believe in just, what do you think some of the resolution would be as far as the permitting process and just the process and the permit?
Well, what you hear from a lot of people, Jackie, is that the Public Works Department is somewhat broken and definitely needs to be reorganized. And I think with the ideas that I put on the table, it would lead to natural reorganization, not just moving that particular department and making its own department, but other ideas as well. I just think in the way that we respond to needs in the city, that needs to change, and that's why I talk about technology so much, and that certainly feeds into permitting as well. No area lends itself to progress or technology more than the permitting process, and more of that can be moved online. It's naturally going to be more efficient and a lot faster.
Got about 30 seconds, Mustafa, to ask the last question.
Well, you talked a lot about the mayor stuff, but you also are on the campaign to talk about education. What role does the mayor have in education?
I think a big role, and that's why I started talking about it early, and eyebrows were raised because people said, well, that's not the purview of the city. Why are you talking about education? Well, I think it's the public schools are the greatest challenge we face here in Texas, and really the greatest challenge we face here in Houston. If the city is in a position to do something about it, we should. We have underutilized space in our libraries that could easily be refashioned into classroom space for pre-K programs. I just think that makes sense and is very much in line with my forward-thinking approach to government.
That's great. Well, Chris Bell, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's
good luck on the race.